Wow, guys, just whew, this is a thing of beauty right here. Definitely has the look back factor. But I gotta say, I prefer darker, stealthier colors. But if I'm being honest, Kawasaki's signature green has kind of grown on me, and nobody does it better than Kawasaki. And I guess it's good too for the new rider who is kind of worried that other road users or cars especially won't be able to notice them on the road. That's not even an issue on this bike. You can see this bike from a mile away, and high visibility is a good thing, especially while you're on a motorcycle. Oof. Anyway, enough talking. Let's take this thing out for a spin. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are finally on the Kawasaki Ninja ZX-4RR, and I've had this bike for a couple of days, and I gotta tell you, this bike is a lot of fun. So I'm just gonna get right into it and try and answer the questions that most people usually have when they see bikes or when they're thinking about buying a bike. First one usually is, how fast does it go? What's its top speed? This bike does, I think, 250 kilometers an hour. That's its top speed. And another question that I get quite often is, especially at gas stations, from a random guy, he'll ask me in Polish, ile ma koni, which is Polish for how much horsepower does it have. So this bike stock does about 77 horsepower and makes about 39 Newton meters of torque, which is 29 foot-pounds of torque for my American riders. It's a 4-stroke engine, 400cc inline 4. You know, and it's, if you're a beginner and you're thinking a 400 is a lot of power, it's not. This bike is super tame, it's super fun. The throttle response is not that twitchy at all. It's very linear on the power delivery. You can have it wide open and nothing would happen. Like, it's very hard to get into a situation where the throttle will get you into trouble. So it's very tame. Power delivery, like I said, is very gradual, very linear, perfect for the beginner. And another thing that people usually want to know is ergonomics. Yeah, that's the other thing. This bike is super comfortable. You are basically sitting upright when you're riding this motorcycle. It is just that comfortable. The reach from the handlebars is not that far. It's not that bad. You know, even in the knees, the bend in the knees is not bad at all. The seat height is about 80 centimeters. You know, for context, I'm 184, which is 6 feet, and I'm pretty comfortable on this bike. It doesn't have an aggressive leaning posture like most super bikes, but I have to tell you, if you're my height or taller, this bike will look kind of small on you, to be honest. But if you're shorter, this bike is perfect. Which is not to say that if you're my height, this bike is not good. It's still a really good bike, and anyone should be able to comfortably flat-footed. The handling is fantastic. This thing is precise. It's light, nimble, flickable, perfect for the street. It weighs about 188 kilos wet, and if you're looking at this as your first motorcycle, the weight is perfect. If you're starting out, it's very manageable. The weight that Kawasaki built this thing is very manageable. The weight is evenly distributed throughout the bike. The brakes are pretty responsive as well. You've got your front brake, 2 dual front discs in the front, one disc in the back. Yeah, it's in terms of braking, it's pretty solid in that regard. Another thing is shifting. Okay, this bike has a quick shifter, which means it has a quick shifter both up and down, which means you actually don't need to use the clutch when shifting. And I have mixed feelings about that. To be honest, I feel like clutchless shifting kind of takes away from the visceral feel of riding a motorcycle. I love knowing when to shift, how to shift, listening to my engine, all that jazz. And I feel like a quick shifter kind of encourages lazy shifting habits, especially if you're a beginner. But you could argue, you could just turn off the quick shifter, you know, it's optional. Yeah, right. To be honest, we're human beings and we love convenience. You're gonna have this thing on day one, have it on day two, and before you know it, you're constantly riding with the quick shifter always on. So for the road, for a beginner, I'm not for them. But if you are taking this bike to the track, then absolutely do have a quick shifter, which is why they were actually invented. Quick shifters were invented for the track to enhance performance. They let you upshift without rolling off the throttle, just like that. So if you're going to take this bike to the track, or if you're buying it specifically as a track toy, the quick shifter is awesome to have on the bike. Right? Now the elephant in the room, drum roll please. The price. This bike comes in at about 48,000 zloty, which is about 10,000 or 11,000 USD, which is a decent chunk of change. Actually, that's a lot of money for your first bike. I wouldn't recommend spending that much on your first bike. I would spend half or even less. I would spend about half or even less, and then invest the rest of the money in proper gear or courses that help you improve your overall skill as a rider. But if you're not so price sensitive and all you want to do is get on two wheels, you don't mind all the electronic aids and the ABS, then by all means, this bike is a perfect beginner bike. I would definitely get this bike. I wouldn't hesitate if money is not an issue. And sound, you know, that's another big one. This bike, factory, straight out the factory, comes with your stock can, which is usually the big, not so good looking stock exhaust on the side. And it doesn't sound, it sounds decent, okay? But I'll tell you one thing, bro, it's definitely not getting the attention of that pretty girl that you'll see at the traffic light. But it doesn't sound, with the stock, in my opinion, the looks of the sound of the stock exhaust doesn't complement the look of this bike. This bike is just too pretty to sound this quiet. But hey, listen, if you aren't a menace to society like me, then by all means keep the stock can on. And yeah, special shout out to Kawasaki for having me out here and making this test ride possible. If you're interested in this bike, I'll pop the dealership's info on the screen and hit my boy Camille up and tell him Tino sent you.